slide number 2. Okay. Okay. There are 4 points. Number 1, please rename your Zoom's username into this following format: name underscore institution. I repeat, name underscore institution. Dimohon untuk Bapak Ibu mengganti username Zoom Anda mengikuti format berikut: nama underscore institusi. Oke. Number 2, please mute your Zoom's audio during the seminar. Dimohon untuk Bapak Ibu dan teman-teman sekalian untuk memasang Zoom dalam mode mute selama seminar berlangsung. Number 3, for Q&A sections, please drop your question in the Zoom's room chat, or please use the raise hand feature before you open the mic or deliver the question. Untuk sesi tanya jawab, teman-teman dan Bapak Ibu untuk menuliskan pertanyaan pada bagian chat Zoom, atau apabila ingin menyampaikan secara langsung, harap menggunakan fitur raise hand terlebih dahulu. Dan yang terakhir, number 4, in the end of this seminar, please fill the feedback link in the Zoom's room chat. Dan pada akhir seminar, dimohon untuk teman-teman dan Bapak Ibu mengisi link feedback yang akan dibagikan pada kolom chat di ruang Zoom. Okay. And I want to remind you to fill the Zoho link on the Zoom's room chat, maybe. It's for the absent. Okay. And now I would like to introduce the committee representative, Ms. Alisa, to give opening speech before we open the webinar today. Please welcome Ms. Alisa.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? I hope you all can hear me. Respectable participants and speaker, hello, my name is Alyssa, one of the members in the incredible team of the Clinical Laboratory Student Peer Group of the Faculty of Psychology, University of Surabaya. It is by my utmost pleasure to welcome you all to the webinar titled Compassion Fatigue, How to Deal with It. I hope everyone is healthy both physically and mentally. First and foremost, we would like to say thank you to our guest speaker, Dr. Shaun Joynt, who's giving this lecture about something he's passionate about from Pretoria, South Africa. And as a pre-graduate myself, I'm very much curious about this rising topic in psychology, and like our participants and everyone out there have been anticipating to know more about it too. I know that because of you, our webinar today is going to be worthwhile. For Dr. Elly and Dr. Mary, without your dedication, we would be lost throughout the process of establishing this webinar. Thank you for your hard work in making this webinar come to light. Our translator / moderator, Michelle, this webinar is going to be much more effective and orderly with you present. And we wouldn't want any other person to do this important position for us today. And to the committee team, thank you for going all out. You guys did an amazing job. And last, but certainly not least, we would like to say thank you for our amazing guests and participants that's joining us today. So many of you people from so many different places willing to spare your time to join us today. You are the last piece of our quest. And from the list of people who's going to lead to this webinar, I would like to say that you're in good professional hands. As I was saying, today's topic is something that we might have experienced before in our life, but some of us can't really pinpoint on what you call that feeling and that situation exactly. So by joining this webinar, I hope we can gain great knowledge and experience about the topic of compassion fatigue and be able to incorporate that in our daily lives. Hopefully, we can learn and share together. So, if there's any questions at all regarding today's topic, don't hesitate because we'd love to hear from you. We hope everything goes smoothly without a hitch. That's all from me. Thank you again and enjoy.
Okay, thank you, Miss Alisa. And about the attendees, if you cannot rename, it's okay. And now please give the warm welcome to Dr. Elly Yuliandari.
Hello. I'm happy to have you all here, the participant from Indonesia and also the participant from South Africa, and also a warm welcoming for Dr. Shaun Joynt. And before you begin the discussion for today, I would like to read a little bit about the curriculum. I think I will share the screen first. Dr. Shaun Joynt, as we can read together, we have so many experience in the academic thing and also the practical thing. And he also has many publications here. The article in some journal, and besides, he work also at the Hope Foundation, that created by Nelson Mandela, and I think that there are many experiences that held by Mr. Dr. Shaun Joynt. So we are very happy to have him here and very honored. I think we can start with the session. Please welcome Mr. Shaun Joynt, and the time is yours for now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elly. I really appreciate this opportunity. It's fantastic to be with you. This collaboration between Indonesia and South Africa, what an opportunity. If one thing we've learned from a global crisis is that we are more connected than what we realize, and that we can share our research and findings with one another. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to share my screen, excuse me, and I'm going to go to my slideshow and open that up. Can everyone see that clearly?
Yeah.
Good.
That's good.
Good. Okay. Michelle, it's also great having you here. So I know I'm in good hands as far as translation is concerned. And as I said yesterday, if I speak too fast or unclear, please do slow me down. We can just do there. I know you won't be waving. You'll just be saying go slower. Okay. So as we go through today, what I do want to focus on is my approach for compassion fatigue, understanding what it is and how to deal with it, has been what I used from my journalistic subjects. And those are the 5 W's and H. And maybe before I jump into this talk, what I do want to make clear is this talk has been presented from a practical layman point of view, because we in our church have found a lot of our congregants, our staff, and our pastors had struggled during the COVID-19 period. And so we want to do as a counseling center, assist them. Michelle, I'm just going to check. Do you want to translate now or shall I continue?
Okay. Maybe I'll translate first. Jadi yang dilakukan oleh Shaun ini adalah dalam masa krisis ini memang kita mendapatkan kesempatan untuk saling berbagi pengalaman dan pengetahuan yang lebih seperti itu. Yang dialami dari Dr. Shaun adalah di gerejanya pastor serta pemuka-pemuka agama di sana itu mengalami kesulitan, sehingga di sini harus ada sesuatu yang dilakukan untuk mereka seperti itu. Dan mungkin nanti saat pembahasan compassion fatigue ini akan dibahas dalam hal yang mungkin lebih praktikal sehingga kita bisa mengikutinya juga.
Thank you, Michelle. So before I continue, I realized maybe you would like to know a little bit about who I am and where I come from. I am married. I have 2 adult children. My son Bradley is 25 and he got married during lockdown, which was a very interesting experience. There was only 10 of us. My daughter Genevieve is 22. My son has studied sports psychology, but he's moved over to accounting. And my daughter is studying politics and international relations.
Jadi Shaun ini menikah, lalu memiliki 2 anak. Anak yang pertama itu umur 24 dan anak yang kedua umur 22. Anak laki-lakinya pertamanya belajar melalui sport, psikologi sport, lalu beralih dengan ke akuntansi. Lalu anak yang perempuan itu umur 22 sekarang dia juga belajar terkait dengan I'm sorry, your daughter learn about?
She's studying politics and international relations and she's 22.
Politik dan hubungan internasional.
Okay. My wife Trudy is a pastor. We've been pastors for over, I'd say 25 years. And we have been pastors in a small town. And then I was an online pastor on the internet. And then we've been pastors together at a mega church of about 3,000 members. So that's our experience.
Jadi istri dari Jude, istri dari Shaun itu adalah seorang pastor selama 25 tahun. Jadi mereka sudah menjadi pastor itu di sebuah kota yang kecil. Namun sekarang mereka juga jadi member dari mega church, yaitu gereja yang punya 3.000 orang lebih jemaat seperti itu.
And for the academics who are interested in this, I've been in research academia for 20 years. My research interest is the well-being of pastors. So I look at their physical, emotional, spiritual, and social well-being, those 4 areas, and as well as forgiveness research, but across religions.
Jadi untuk yang tertarik pada research, Shaun sendiri sudah melakukan research ini selama 25 tahun, dan topik utama dari research yang dilakukan Shaun adalah terkait dengan kesejahteraan dari pastor. Jadi dia melihat dari ada 4 hal yang menjadi topik kesejahteraan tersebut, dan salah satunya adalah forgiveness atau pengampunan seperti itu.
And then I'm not going to elaborate on this. And Michelle, I hope you're able to translate this. But if you want to know what is my location as a researcher, my ontology is post-positivist, and my epistemology is critical realism.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes. My location as a researcher is my ontology. The reality of being is called post-positivist. That's where I locate myself. And then also my epistemology, how do I know? I ascribe to critical realism. So that's why I say I'm not sure if you're going to have those words.
Jadi fokus pada research-nya itu ada di ontologi dan post participes, post participes, dan mungkin itu bidangnya Shaun untuk di sananya itu mempelajari terkhusus terkait dengan hal tersebut.
Critical study also.
Yeah, critical studies.
Critical realism, yeah.
Critical realism.
Yeah, let's jump into the topic at hand today. So, as I said before, I'm approaching this from a journalist point of view, which normally would ask questions as you see on the screen. What is it? when does it occur, who does it affect, where does it take place, why does it happen, and how do we deal with it?
Jadi Shaun hari ini akan melihat dari sudut pandang jurnalistik, yaitu terkait dengan 5W1H yang kita tahu, yaitu apa itu, kapan itu terjadi, siapa yang akan terdampak dari hal itu, di mana itu terjadi, kenapa itu terjadi, dan bagaimana kita dapat menghandle hal tersebut.
Okay, so firstly, what is compassion fatigue? And before I go into these definitions, what we do need to realize is compassion fatigue has been around for a while, since 1992. So it is not brand new on the horizon of research. But what is happening is where it was originally just for nurses and within the medical field, it's expanding into other fields.
Jadi sebenarnya yang hari ini kita bahas terkait compassion fatigue itu bukan sesuatu yang baru. Hal ini sudah ditemukan dari tahun 1992, namun pada saat itu dikhususkan pada perawat atau tenaga medis.
So some researchers have positioned compassion fatigue as a subsection of burnout.
Jadi beberapa peneliti melakukan subseksi pada compassion fatigue ini termasuk dalam burnout.
And while burnout could take longer to develop and also longer to recover from, compassion fatigue usually happens quicker but can also be recovered quicker.
Jadi kalau burnout itu biasanya terjadi dalam jangka waktu yang lebih panjang dan biasanya akan lebih sulit untuk disembuhkan, namun compassion fatigue ini akan berlangsung pada periode yang lebih sebentar, tapi juga lebih mudah untuk dipulihkan.
So two aspects of what it is, and the first one is, as I've listed there, it's an apathy or indifference towards the suffering of others as a result of overexposure to tragic news and stories, images, and the subsequent appeals for assistance.
Jadi poin pertama adalah adanya sikap apatis atau ketidakpedulian terhadap penderitaan orang lain atau sebagai akibat dari paparan yang berlebih terkait dengan berita atau gambaran tragis dan kebutuhan akan bantuan yang mengikuti hal tersebut.
So if one thinks of today, when I opened my phone this morning, I immediately looked at the news headlines and I could see news from across the world instantly. From earthquakes, to hurricanes, to starvation, to floods, and I was overwhelmed by the amount of news that I received on my phone.
Jadi saat pagi ini, Dr. Shaun membuka berita, dia dapat secara langsung menghadapi berita-berita yang bisa membaca, bisa melihat berita-berita terkait dengan gempa bumi, terkait dengan banjir, dan berbagai macam penderitaan yang lainnya, dan itu kadang-kadang membuat dia merasa overwhelmed atau sangat terbebani dengan hal tersebut.
And it wasn't like that many years ago. Many years ago, you lived in a small village and everyone knew everyone's business, but it was a small village, 200, 300, 400 people. And if you got news from around the world, it would be because of a traveling soldier, troops coming through, maybe in the Roman times, or it could be a musician who's traveling through and he's going to tell you some of the news that's happened across the world. So you were exposed to less traumatic events.
Jadi hal ini sangat berbeda sekali dengan beberapa tahun yang lalu, di mana teknologi mungkin tidak terlalu canggih, di mana kita hanya terekspos dengan sangat sedikit hal-hal yang membuat kita trauma, karena mungkin perputaran informasinya itu lebih sedikit.
So that would be more aligned to secondary trauma exposure.
Jadi hal ini dikenal juga sebagai stres traumatis sekunder.
However, compassion fatigue, if we look at the second definition, is the profound emotional and physical erosion that takes place when helpers are unable to refuel and regenerate.
Jadi terjadi pengikisan secara emosional dan fisik yang mendalam yang terjadi ketika seorang penolong atau helper itu tidak bisa mengisi dirinya sendiri dan tidak bisa beregenerasi.
So there are two aspects. There's erosion, a giving out, and then there's the not filling up, unable to refuel.
Jadi ada dua aspek, yaitu pengikisan, atau yang kedua adalah tidak bisa untuk mengisi kembali atau refuel, mengisi diri sendiri.
And so I want to use the illustration of a bucket that has a tap going on the top and a tap at the bottom. And you need to fill the bucket with water on the top, and then as you are busy watering the garden or filling up your swimming pool, the water is going out at the bottom.
Jadi ada ilustrasi bahwa saat kita punya ember, kita diisi dari atas, kita akan diisi dengan air, sehingga saat kita buka ember tersebut dari bawah, kita bisa menyirami tanaman di taman.
So the emotional physical erosion takes place when more water is going out than water coming in.
Jadi emosional erosi atau pengikisan emosional tersebut terjadi saat air yang keluar dari ember tersebut lebih banyak daripada air yang masuk dalam ember.
And also to add to the illustration is we can either fill the bucket with water or with polluted water, dirty water. So it's both quantity and quality that's important.
Jadi ada dua hal yang penting, yaitu kuantitas dan kualitasnya. Kita bisa terkait dengan banyak sedikitnya air yang dimasukkan ke ember, atau terkait dengan bersih atau tidaknya air yang dimasukkan ke ember tersebut.
So to continue with the word compassion, it's made up of two words, com and passion. Com in its original means with. Passion means suffering, the original Latin. So we're talking about coming alongside someone in their suffering. That's what compassion is.
Jadi ada compassion tersebut dari kata dua, yaitu com atau datang, lalu passion yaitu penderitaan. Jadi bagaimana seorang itu datang dengan penderitaannya tersebut.
So compassion fatigue is when you're coming along someone who is suffering, but you're getting tired of it because it's draining and you are not refueling.
Jadi compassion fatigue itu adalah saat kita bersama dengan orang yang mengalami penderitaan tersebut, tapi kita tidak berhasil untuk melakukan refuel yang tadi, mengisi diri sendiri, sehingga kita mengalami kelelahan.
So what compassion fatigue isn't is burnout. Burnout is exhaustion of physical, emotional strength or motivation, usually as a result of prolonged stress or frustration.
Jadi compassion fatigue ini bukanlah burnout. Kalau burnout itu lebih pada kelelahan atau kejenuhan terkait dengan kekuatan atau motivasi secara fisik dan emosional, biasanya akibat stres atau frustasi yang berkepanjangan.
And maybe at this stage it's important to say that I'm speaking to you today as a participant observer, because I've lived through the things I'm busy talking to you about.
Sorry, can you repeat that, sir?
I'm speaking today as a participant, observer, someone who's both experienced and looked at these things.
Oke, jadi saat ini Shaun itu berdiri di sini sebagai partisipan juga, sebagai orang yang pernah juga mengalami hal tersebut.
So I was diagnosed with depression about 3 years ago, and it was a result of burnout in a work situation that it escalated.
Jadi Shaun ini sempat mengalami depresi 3 tahun yang lalu, itu akibat burnout terkait dengan beban kerja yang sangat tinggi.
And so it's been a 2-year journey for me to come to terms with what happened to me through burnout and the depression and the medication I'm on. And sometimes it's difficult to talk to others about this because of the stigma that will they think differently of me when they know I'm on medication.
Jadi 3 tahun ini sudah menjadi suatu perjalanan yang cukup berat karena dengan pengobatannya, dengan mungkin treatment yang dilakukan, ada kesulitan juga untuk mengatakan hal tersebut kepada orang lain karena ada stigma-stigma atau cap yang diberikan oleh lingkungan terkait dengan orang yang ada dalam pengobatan depresi.
So let's carry on with what burnout is. It's the physical and emotional exhaustion that workers can experience when they have low job satisfaction and feel powerless and overwhelmed at work. However, burnout does not necessarily mean that our view of the world has been damaged or that we've lost the ability to feel compassion for others.
Jadi burnout itu juga merupakan kelelahan fisik dan emosional yang dapat dialami oleh pekerja ketika mereka memiliki kepuasan kerja yang rendah, merasa tidak berdaya, dan kewalahan di tempat kerja. Namun kelelahan ini tidak selalu berarti bahwa pandangan tentang dunia ini telah rusak, tapi juga atau bahwa kita telah kehilangan kemampuan untuk memiliki compassion atau kasih kepada orang lain.
So burnout has got 3 components. The first one is lack of personal accomplishment. The second one is depersonalization. And the third one is emotional exhaustion.
Jadi burnout itu memiliki 3 hal, yaitu lack of personal accomplishment.
Personal accomplishment.
Ada kurangnya pencapaian personal, lalu depersonalisasi, dan kelelahan emosional.
And so in my situation, it wasn't lack of personal accomplishment because I felt fulfilled at work. It wasn't depersonalization. It was extreme emotional exhaustion.
Jadi di kasus Shaun ini bukan yang pertama, bukan ketidakmampuannya dia, bukan depersonalisasi juga, namun merupakan yang ketiga, yaitu kelelahan secara emosional yang teramat sangat.
I had a very difficult situation at work with a staff member, and at that stage, my superiors were not assisting me with the situation, and that added to this extreme tension inside that ended up in a severe burnout situation.
Jadi Shaun saat itu memiliki problem dengan koleganya, dengan staff member di sana, dan seniornya juga tidak membantu dengan kondisi tersebut sehingga dia mengalami tekanan yang teramat sangat dari pekerjaannya.
Okay, so we know compassion fatigue isn't burnout.
Jadi saat ini kita tahu bahwa compassion fatigue itu bukanlah burnout.
It is also not vicarious traumatization. So vicarious traumatization is the indirect trauma that can occur when we are exposed to difficult or disturbing images and stories secondhand.
Compassion fatigue ini juga bukanlah trauma yang diwakilkan atau vicarious traumatization, tapi merupakan trauma yang mana itu merupakan trauma tidak langsung yang dapat terjadi ketika kita dihadapkan pada gambar atau cerita yang sulit atau menggelisahkan atau mengganggu kita.
And that's what I was referring to in the beginning when I spoke about the news stories on my phone.
Itu adalah hal yang digambarkan oleh Shaun saat dia mengatakan terkait dengan berita yang dia dapatkan dari HP-nya.
Secondly, it's the profound shift in worldview that can occur in helping professionals when they work with clients who've experienced trauma. Helpers notice that their fundamental beliefs about the world are being altered and possibly damaged by being repeatedly exposed to traumatic material.
Terdapat perubahan besar dari cara pandang yang terjadi oleh orang-orang profesional yang bertugas membantu ini, karena mereka selalu berhubungan dengan klien-klien yang mengalami trauma. Dan profesional ini akan menyadari bahwa keyakinan mendasar mereka terkait dengan dunia ini berubah atau mungkin rusak karena berulang kali terpapar hal-hal yang traumatis.
So maybe I must take a moment to explain what a worldview is. A worldview is how you perceive the world. We all have worldviews, and they are influenced by our upbringing, they are influenced by our environment, and they're influenced by our religion or faith.
Jadi, Shaun menjelaskan tadi terkait dengan worldview. Worldview itu adalah cara pandang kita mengenai dunia ini seperti apa. Jadi, hal ini dipengaruhi oleh 3 hal, yaitu upbringing atau bagaimana kita membawakan diri. Yang kedua adalah environment atau lingkungan kita. Yang ketiga adalah the third one is
it was environment, the way you were brought up, and then your faith or religion influence.
Religion, okay. Dan agama yang diyakini oleh kita.
So, us as human beings are generally spiritual. I say generally because some don't think they are, but in essence we are. And when we talk about a worldview, change in vicarious traumatization, it could be that you believe that God cares for people and he wants to help them. But continuously being exposed to suffering of others, eventually you can think, maybe God isn't caring. Maybe he doesn't want to help.
Jadi terkait dengan sesi religiusitas ini, semua orang itu memiliki religiusitasnya, tapi kembali lagi mungkin ada beberapa orang yang merasa mereka tidak religius, tapi yang dimaksudkan di sini adalah lebih pada awalnya orang itu akan percaya bahwa Tuhan itu peduli pada orang-orang dan mau membantu. Namun saat terus-menerus dipaparkan dengan trauma-trauma yang terjadi, pada satu titik orang akan merasa bahwa mungkin Tuhan itu tidak mau membantu atau mungkin Tuhan itu tidak peduli.
So yeah, I've got a table with the 3 compared to one another. And if you look carefully, you'll see the first column has burnout, the second column compassion fatigue, and the third column vicarious traumatization.
Jadi di sini ada 3 kolom terkait dengan 3 hal tersebut, burnout, compassion fatigue, dan vicarious traumatization.
And what I've tried to do is group them with colors. So where they have the similar colors, as in purple, you would know they overlap.
Jadi di sini Dr. Shaun sudah melakukan grouping dengan warna yang berbeda. Kita tahu bahwa warna yang sama berarti mereka overlap di hal-hal tersebut.
Where it's in black, that is more unique to each of those sections.
Sedangkan di warna hitam itu menunjukkan bahwa itu adalah keunikan dari masing-masing bagian.
Notice the one that is in a brown-red color, because it's often the same as in vicarious traumatization, a change in beliefs, expectations, or assumptions.
Kita bisa melihat di yang berwarna merah, di compassion fatigue, itu adalah perubahan dari kepercayaan, ekspektasi, dan asumsi.
So I'm not going to go through all of these because there are too many to talk about, but I want to highlight a few.
Shaun tidak akan membahas semuanya, tapi akan melihat beberapa yang penting untuk dibahas.
So compassion fatigue has the elements of sadness and grief.
Jadi compassion fatigue ini memiliki elemen yaitu kesedihan dan duka.
There's also an avoidance of and dread working with some people.
Ada juga elemen yaitu menghindar atau ketakutan untuk bekerja sama dengan orang tertentu.
And if we go down, you'll see the next purple says somatic or physical complaints.
Dan saat kita lihat ke bawah yang berwarna ungu itu adalah keluhan fisik.
So in my experience of compassion fatigue, I had gone through these various elements where there was sadness and grief. There was an avoidance or dread of working with some people. there was some somatic or physical complaints.
Saat Shaun merasakan tersebut ada 3 hal. Di situ ada kesedihan dan duka, ada penghindaran dan ketakutan untuk bekerja sama dengan orang tertentu, juga ada keluhan fisik.
Although I would say compassion fatigue was very secondary or third and very mild for me, I was suffering more from burnout.
Walaupun di kasus Shaun itu compassion fatigue ini adalah sekunderinya, bukan yang utama. Yang utamanya adalah tetap burnout.
It was more in our staff and members that I noticed some of the compassion fatigue taking place. For example, there was an increase in sick days being logged.
Jadi itu bisa dilihat dalam beberapa staff membernya Shaun, yaitu dilihat dari peningkatan penggunaan cuti sakit.
So these are the signs. Let's go to the symptoms.
Nah, hal-hal ini adalah tanda-tandanya, kita melihat gejalanya apa.
Notice that all 3 have physical symptoms, psychological distress symptoms, there are cognitive shifts, the way we think, and there are relational disturbances.
Jadi di ketiga hal tersebut, itu sama-sama memiliki beberapa hal yang serupa, yaitu ada penyakit secara fisik, lalu ada tekanan psikologis, ada pergeseran kognisi, serta ada gangguan yang sifatnya relasional.
What compassion fatigue has in addition are those remaining 5: headaches, digestive problems, muscle tension, fatigue, poor concentration, focus, and judgment.
Jadi apa yang dimiliki oleh compassion fatigue ini lebih dari 2 yang lainnya adalah adanya sakit kepala, ada masalah pencernaan, ada ketegangan otot, kelelahan, konsentrasi, fokus, dan judgment yang buruk.
So some of our staff had mentioned that they had digestive problems. Others had started getting migraines, and they were going to the doctor to be booked off, and I started asking the question, what is going on here?
Jadi beberapa staf itu mulai mengeluhkan terkait dengan sakit kepala, migrain, permasalahan pencernaan, dan mulai bertanya-tanya, ada apa ini?
And due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there had been an increase in challenges the pastors were facing, because members were coming to them saying, I've lost my job, my spouse wants a divorce, or this has happened, I don't have food, and this was creating some challenges, the volume or the amount of people coming to the pastor.
Jadi di kongregasi dari Shaun ini mulai saat COVID-19 mulai banyak masalah-masalah yang muncul terkait dan itu merupakan hal-hal yang dialami oleh pastor di sana. Salah satunya adalah jemaatnya datang dan mengatakan bahwa mereka tidak punya makanan, mereka mau bercerai, dan persoalan-persoalan yang lainnya yang dihadapin di masa pandemi ini.
Consider the challenge of hearing people coming to you, we don't have food, and you can help a few, but eventually you don't have enough to help the others, and you have to turn them away.
Saat mendengarkan jemaat mengatakan bahwa mereka tidak punya makanan, kita akan berusaha untuk membantu semampunya, tapi pada satu titik kita sudah tidak bisa membantu lagi, sehingga kita harus membiarkan mereka pergi tanpa bantuan.
Okay, so we then move on to the triggers.
Jadi kita akan beralih pada trigger atau pemicunya.
Okay, so again we have the first 3 that are very similar for all burnout, compassion fatigue, and vicarious traumatization. Personal characteristics taking place in all 3. In other words, the type of person you are can influence this in your life.
Jadi di ketiganya kembali lagi memiliki tiga aspek yang sama. Yang pertama adalah personal karakteristik. Personal karakteristik ini adalah bagaimana tipe kepribadian kita saat menghadapi sesuatu.
For example, people with perfectionist tendencies would be more likely to be affected by this?
Sebagai contoh, orang yang perfeksionis akan lebih mudah untuk terdampak dengan tiga hal ini: burnout, compassion fatigue, and vicarious traumatization.
So then also work-related attributes, things happening at work, the work environment.
Jadi juga termasuk dengan sikap hal-hal yang terkait dengan pekerjaan dan sikap terkait dengan pekerjaan serta karakteristik organisasi pada tempat kerja.
So notice in compassion fatigue, the one that is highlighted in the brown-red color, prolonged exposure to trauma material of clients.
Kita bisa melihat pada yang di warna merah, itu adalah paparan terhadap materi trauma yang dimiliki oleh klien secara berkepanjangan.
As I referred to earlier, imagine you're a passed-on staff and either a staff member or a congregant comes. In your case, you are a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a therapist, and you are exposed over and over to the trauma material of your clients.
Jadi bayangkan saja Anda seorang pastor, seorang psikolog, atau seorang terapis yang terus-menerus akan dihadapkan pada materi-materi yang terkait dengan trauma.
Going back to our bucket, so what's happening is water is going at the bottom. You are caring for them, but we are concerned that no water is coming in at the top or too little to compensate.
Jadi kita lihat lagi pada reka ulang yang tadi bahwa saat ember kita tuh terus-menerus mengeluarkan air, yaitu kita harus terus-menerus untuk menjaga orang lain, menangani klien, tapi tidak ada air yang masuk ke dalam ember tersebut.
So let's look at the emotional symptoms. So firstly, there's a feeling of being overwhelmed or hopeless or helpless or powerless when you hear of others suffering.
Kita bisa melihat pada simptom emosional bahwa kita merasa kewalahan, putus asa, tidak berdaya saat mendengar orang lain itu menderita.
I recall one day my wife wanting to tell me a story of someone going through a difficult situation, and I said to her, I can't hear this. I can't cope with hearing more bad news during the COVID-19 period.
Jadi Dr. Shaun menceritakan bahwa istrinya mau menceritakan terkait dengan problemnya orang lain, dan Dr. Shaun bilang, kayaknya saya sudah nggak bisa nih mendengarkan hal-hal yang seperti itu lagi, karena ini sudah terlalu banyak untuk bisa saya terima atau saya tangani selama pandemi.
Another symptom is feeling anger or irritability or sadness or anxiety.
Lalu yang berikutnya adalah perasaan-perasaan marah, terganggu, sedih, dan cemas.
And then feeling detached from your surroundings or from your physical or emotional experiences.
Lalu juga merasa terpisah dari lingkungan atau pengalaman fisik dan emosional yang kita miliki.
Another symptom, feeling emotionally, psychologically, or physically exhausted. Burnt out or numbness.
Simptom yang lain adalah bahwa merasa kelelahan secara emosional, psikologis, fisik, merasa burnout, dan merasa mulai mati rasa.
Another symptom, emotional symptom, reduced empathy, feeling for others, and a limited tolerance for stress.
Simptom yang lainnya adalah berkurangnya empati dan terbatasnya toleransi terhadap stres.
And the final emotional symptom at this stage is feeling hypersensitive or oversensitive, or insensitive, which is undersensitive, to stories we hear or to emotional material we might hear or see.
Dan yang terakhir adalah kita merasa sangat sensitif atau sebaliknya sangat tidak sensitif terhadap cerita yang kita dengar atau terhadap materi-materi emosional yang kita lihat atau dengar.
What I'm not going to do is spend too much time on all the symptoms, because my aim is to give you the coping or care, self-care tools to help you in this process.
saya tidak mau terlalu panjang membahas terkait simptomnya. Kita akan lanjut saja untuk membahas bagaimana kita bisa menangani hal ini.
As I said, this talk is really a practical approach and not an academic paper.
Jadi pembicaraan kali ini tuh lebih pada praktikal dibandingkan dengan akademis.
Because I'm concerned for people in the people industry, the caring industry, such as psychologists, psychiatrists, pastors, nurses, doctors, that they sustain and can endure the challenges they face.
Karena sangat diharapkan bahwa orang-orang yang ada di industri yang kita perlu merawat orang lain ini seperti psikolog, psikiater, dokter, perawat, dan lain sebagainya itu dapat menerima dan menangani ini dengan baik, supaya mereka bisa bekerja dengan lebih baik.
Let's look at the cognitive symptoms. So the first one we have is a constant thinking or dwelling around the suffering of the trauma of survivors. We could say that's rumination, thinking over and over about the suffering of the trauma of survivors.
Jadi salah satu simptom kognitifnya adalah terus-menerus berpikir atau tenggelam dalam pemikiran terkait dengan penderitaan dari korban yang mengalami trauma ini.
It's important to note the word constant, because that is what goes through here often.
Penekanannya adalah pada konstan atau terus-menerus.
Constant self-blame or thoughts of I should or could have done more.
Terus-menerus menyalahkan diri sendiri dan memiliki pikiran bahwa saya harusnya bisa melakukan lebih daripada ini.
I had to work through this personally a few years ago when one of my clients committed suicide, and I had to self-evaluate, had I done enough or not? And so I had gone through some of these processes.
Jadi Dr. Shaun sendiri sempat merasakan hal ini secara pribadi saat salah satu dari pasiennya itu memutuskan untuk melakukan bunuh diri. Sehingga beliau memikirkan kembali apakah saya sudah melakukan yang terbaik untuk kasus ini atau tidak.
But notice it wasn't suffering of compassion fatigue because I wasn't constantly fixated on this.
Tapi saat itu Dr. Shaun tahu bahwa ini bukan gejala kognitif dari compassion fatigue karena dia tidak terus-menerus tenggelam dalam kesedihan dari pasiennya tersebut.
So another cognitive symptom is changes in belief systems such as belief about self, others, world, future, or meaning in life.
Berikutnya adalah adanya perubahan dari belief system atau sistem kepercayaan seperti kepercayaan terhadap diri sendiri, orang lain, dunia ini, masa depan, serta arti dari kehidupan.
Once again, if you are a religious person, whether you are a Muslim or a Christian or a Hindu, what might come up is a question of, is God good? Because he allows the suffering, or is he powerful because he doesn't stop the suffering?
Untuk orang-orang yang religius dari semua agama, Kristen, Islam, Hindu, Buddha, dan lain sebagainya, pertanyaan yang mendasar adalah apakah Tuhan itu baik karena dia mengizinkan adanya penderitaan. Yang kedua adalah apakah Tuhan itu benar-benar berkuasa karena tidak bisa melakukan sesuatu terhadap penderitaan tersebut.
So another cognitive symptom is reduced sense of personal and occupational accomplishment or efficacy.
Simptom lainnya adalah berkurangnya rasa pencapaian atau kemampuan baik secara pribadi atau dalam pekerjaan.
And the final one, difficulty concentrating, focusing, or making decisions.
Dan yang terakhir adalah kesulitan untuk berkonsentrasi, fokus, dan membuat keputusan.
Let's go over to the physical symptoms.
Kita akan melihat pada simptom fisiknya atau gejala fisik.
So it's important to note with any of these 4 categories of symptoms that I'm mentioning that if you exhibit any of these, it doesn't mean you have compassion fatigue. It means you should go and see a specialist to diagnose and see if you have this and then deal with it.
Jadi terdapat beberapa hal di sini, namun apabila Anda mengalami hal-hal yang terdapat di sini, belum tentu Anda mengalami compassion fatigue, tapi Anda harus melihat profesional untuk melihat apa gejala-gejala ini, apa maksud dari gejala-gejala ini, dan bagaimana cara menyelesaikannya.
And one of the dangers for professionals is that we think we can self-diagnose ourselves, and maybe often it's correct, but I do recommend going to a colleague that you trust to get a second opinion to say, am I diagnosing myself correctly? Or to say to the colleague, please can you tell me, I'm exhibiting these things, what do you think?
Jadi sebagai profesional kadang-kadang kita seringkali ingin membantu diri kita sendiri, kita mendiagnosis diri kita sendiri, namun mungkin akan lebih baik saat kita bisa meminta bantuan dari kolega atau teman profesi yang lain untuk kita bisa cek apakah betul apa yang kita diagnosiskan terhadap diri kita sendiri itu sudah tepat atau belum, dan apakah mereka punya masukan lain terkait dengan hal itu.
So the physical symptoms, and I'm just going to read all 3 of them, and then Michelle can translate. It's nausea, dizziness, headaches, difficulty sleeping, and nightmares, intense, agitated, or on edge.
Jadi physical symptomnya adalah ada rasa mual, pusing, sakit kepala, ada kesulitan untuk tidur, mimpi buruk, merasa tegang, gelisah, dan cemas.
And then finally, behavioral symptoms, starting with self-isolation and withdrawal.
Akhirnya kita sampai pada gejala-gejala behavioral atau perilaku.
Poor coping such as, sorry Michelle.
Ada withdrawal dan isolasi diri. Ada penarikan diri dan isolasi diri.
Poor coping such as self-medicating and increase in substance abuse or use.
Ada kemampuan coping yang buruk seperti mencoba untuk mengobati diri sendiri dan meningkatnya penggunaan obat-obatan.
Another symptom, relational conflict, increase in that.
Ada yang lain, yaitu meningkatnya konflik dalam relasi.
And another one, feeling less efficient or productive at work.
Dan ada juga terkait dengan merasa kurang efisien atau produktif dalam pekerjaan.
And finally, reduced pleasure in activities we used to enjoy and reduced work satisfaction.
Dan berikutnya adalah berkurangnya kesenangan dalam melakukan aktivitas yang dulunya dinikmati dan adanya penurunan dalam kepuasan kerja.
So those are the 4 segments: emotional, cognitive, physical, and behavioral.
Jadi tadi adalah 4 segmen, yaitu emosional, kognitif, physical, dan behavior, gejala behavior.
Okay, so when does it occur? It's usually higher risk factors in persons who are in these different areas. So specializing in therapy that introduces them to extreme issues nearly every session.
Jadi hal ini akan muncul dan orang-orang yang memiliki hal ini itu memiliki faktor resiko yang lebih tinggi, yaitu orang yang memiliki spesialisasi atau pada terapi atau hal-hal yang selalu memaparkan mereka terhadap isu-isu yang ekstrim di hampir setiap sesinya.
Or being physically threatened by a person under their therapeutic care.
Atau secara fisik itu terancam oleh orang yang ada pada therapeutic care yang mereka lakukan.
We had such an incident in our counseling center because firstly, we offer free counseling, so people don't have to pay. And then secondly, we have people who walk in from the street, including homeless people. And one of the situations was where a man got physically threatening with one of our female counselors.
Jadi ada insiden di tempat konseling yang Shaun miliki, yaitu di konseling center mereka. Itu karena itu sifatnya adalah gratis, mereka tidak perlu membayar sesuatu apapun, sehingga banyak orang-orang yang homeless atau tidak punya rumah yang datang. Dan pada saat itu ada seseorang yang akhirnya mengancam seorang terapis di sana secara fisik, seorang terapis perempuan di sana secara fisik.
In this case, my colleague didn't suffer from compassion fatigue, but was a high risk for that.
Jadi di saat ini kolega dari Mr. Shaun ini tidak mengalami compassion fatigue, tapi punya resiko yang tinggi untuk mengalami hal tersebut.
Another risk factor is a person under their care dying by suicide, and I mentioned that was a situation for me. But I did not suffer compassion fatigue because I did not ruminate on it. I reflected, realistically spoke, and then, in a sense, let it go.
Jadi yang berikutnya adalah ada orang yang kita rawat itu meninggal karena bunuh diri. Hal ini adalah sesuatu yang terjadi pada Dr. Shaun. Namun Dr. Shaun tidak mengalami compassion fatigue karena beliau merefleksikan hal tersebut, lalu melihatnya secara rasional dan akhirnya bisa melepaskan hal tersebut.
The final one in this slide is providing therapeutic services to someone considered dangerous.
Jadi kita juga jadi resikonya menjadi tinggi saat kita menyediakan layanan terapeutik bagi orang yang berbahaya.
The next three high risk factors is for people working exclusively with people who experience depression and or child abuse.
Jadi saat kita bekerja secara eksklusif dengan orang-orang yang mengalami depresi atau dan penyiksaan anak.
Then also specializing in treating death, grief, and bereavement.
Dan orang-orang juga yang mengkhususkan diri dalam menangani kasus-kasus kematian, duka, dan kehilangan.
For example, one category is oncology nurses.
Salah satu contohnya adalah perawat onkologi.
Or you could have chaplains who are frequently visiting hospices where people are dying.
Atau di tempat di mana sering sekali dia mengunjungi rumah sakit yang banyak orang yang meninggal.
Finally, providing therapy for someone who has experienced the death of a child or who has a dying child.
Terakhir adalah memberikan terapi bagi orang yang pernah mengalami kematian anak atau memiliki anak yang sekarat.
Notice how in these areas the exposure to child pain or death has quite a high impact on people getting or susceptible to compassion fatigue.
Jadi kita bisa melihat bahwa yang memiliki relasi dengan anak, penderitaan pada anak-anak itu sangat tinggi resikonya untuk mengalami compassion fatigue.
And I think, for example, social workers who work with children are particularly at risk.
Sorry, sir.
I think of social workers who particularly work focusing on children. They are at high risk for compassion fatigue.
Jadi orang-orang yang banyak yang mengasuh anak, merawat anak-anak yang merawat anak-anak ini beresiko tinggi untuk mengalami compassion fatigue.
Okay, so who does it affect? Firstly, those who regularly work in a helping or healing capacity.
Siapa yang terdampak dengan hal ini? Itu adalah orang-orang yang secara terus-menerus atau secara reguler bekerja di bidang yang membantu atau menyembuhkan orang lain, memiliki kapasitas untuk membantu dan menyembuhkan.
For example, therapists, nurses, clergy, which is just another name for people in religious institutions like pastors or fathers, lawyers, counselors. These are the people that get affected by compassion fatigue.
Sebagai contohnya adalah terapis, perawat, ada pendeta atau pemuka agama, lalu lawyer atau pengacara yang sering dan konselor atau orang-orang yang sering menghadapi hal-hal yang seperti itu.
So I remember quite a number of years ago arriving on the accident scene where my sister with her 2 children and a worker were being tended to by an ambulance and the fire brigade because she had swerved out the way of another car and hit a tree. And at that scene, my niece died. And the chaplain was there on the scene to comfort and help the family. And I was aware of his exposure to extreme traumatic events over and over. And as I worked through this talk, I have flashbacks to that moment of what does he face every time he gets to an accident scene.
Saat itu ada kejadian insiden atau kecelakaan di mana ada kakak perempuan yang 2 orang anaknya serta seorang pekerjanya yaitu mengalami kecelakaan lalu lintas di mana mereka menabrak pohon dan kemenakan dari Dr. Shaun ini meninggal dunia. Dan saat itu ada seorang pastor yang memberikan konseling atau memberikan bantuan terkait dengan hal tersebut, terkait dengan kematian kemenakannya itu. Dan saat ini Dr. Shaun sendiri melihat bahwa apa yang dialami oleh pastor itu saat terus-menerus mendapatkan atau terpapar dengan peristiwa traumatis tersebut.
Okay, so where does it take place? It takes place most of the time in workplaces such as hospice, where people are tended in their final hours or days before death, in hospitals, in churches. So many workplaces where people are involved in suffering and trauma.
Jadi di mana hal ini bisa terjadi yaitu di tempat kerja seperti sebenarnya rumah untuk perawatan untuk pasien-pasien yang terminal, pasien-pasien yang sudah mungkin tinggal menunggu waktu saja seperti itu. Lalu ada rumah sakit, gereja, dan tempat-tempat yang sering terpapar dengan penderitaan dan trauma-trauma seperti itu.
But I think I'm challenging the literature a little bit because I haven't seen too much in it considering home situations, mostly work. And why I've added home in is your immediate family members, extended family or friends. And I'll give you an example why I've added that.
Walaupun belum ada contoh yang besar terkait dengan hal ini terjadi pada konteks rumah, namun di dalam rumah ini terdapat anggota keluarga inti, keluarga besar, dan teman. Dan sebentar lagi Shaun akan menjelaskan mengapa dia menambahkan rumah ini dalam resiko untuk mengalami compassion fatigue.
So why I've included a home is my wife's father, my father-in-law, was diagnosed with dementia. And his progress or regress is a better word, has been quite fast and accelerated. And my mother-in-law is having to look after him. And what I'm noticing is some signs of compassion fatigue because she cannot get away from the situation. He is with her all the time.
Jadi mertua dari Shaun ini mengalami demensia dan kondisinya itu menurun dengan cepat. Dan mertua perempuannya harus merawat suaminya tersebut sehingga ya sepertinya mengalami compassion fatigue karena dia tidak bisa keluar dari kondisi tersebut.
So she would show symptoms of at times being very angry and irritable, And then there are other times when she's talking to me either in person or on the phone and she would break down crying.
Jadi mertua perempuannya ini akan menunjukkan simptom-simptom marah, mudah tersinggung, dan saat akhirnya dikonfrontasi biasanya akan menjadi menangis akhirnya.
And that's why I think compassion fatigue is not just related to workplace, but I also think it can be in some instances in our home environment.
Jadi tidak hanya terjadi pada tempat kerja, namun ini juga bisa terjadi pada lingkungan rumah.
So Figley, who's the author, Charles Figley, this is his 2001 diagram of the compassion fatigue process. If you want to learn as much as you possibly can on the topic of compassion fatigue, he is the founder, in a sense, or what we call the seminal author, Charles Figley.
Jika Anda ingin mengetahui lebih lanjut lagi terkait dengan compassion fatigue ini, yaitu ada Charles Figley, itu adalah bapak atau founder dari istilah compassion fatigue ini.
So step one, if we look on the left, there's an exposure to suffering.
Yang pertama di sebelah kiri atas terdapat paparan terhadap penderitaan.
And then step two, you as the therapist has concern for your client.
Langkah kedua adalah bagi terapis itu atau profesional, mereka memiliki kepedulian terhadap kliennya.
And in the case of my mother-in-law, she has concern for her husband.
Di kasus ibu mertua dari Shaun ini, dia punya kepedulian terhadap suaminya.
So that results in step three, where you respond with or you have the ability to have empathy. So there's exposure to suffering, you are concerned, and you have an ability to have empathy.
Jadi sebagai respon daripada dua hal tersebut, akhirnya kamu akan memiliki respon dari empati tersebut, atau juga memiliki kemampuan untuk melakukan sesuatu secara empatik.
And that results in an empathic or empathy response.
Jadi tiga hal tersebut nanti akan menjadi respon empatik dari seseorang.
Step 5, you're able to have some detachment, or you choose to have some detachment, along with step 6, where there's also a sense of satisfaction that you have been able to assist, or you have been able to appropriately detach. And that results in residual compassion stress.
Jadi di level kelima ada detachment atau memisahkan diri. Lalu ada yang keenam adalah sense of satisfaction atau kepuasan, rasa kepuasan yang dimiliki diri, yang mana dua hal tersebut nantinya akan menjadi residual compassion stress atau sisa stres dari rasa mengasihi orang lain.
The detachment could also be that you couldn't detach appropriately.
Jadi di proses detachment atau memisahkan diri tersebut, mungkin yang terjadi adalah kita tidak bisa memisahkan diri secara tepat.
So this residual compassion stress, added to it prolonged exposure to suffering, step 8, and then also traumatic memories, step 9, and step 10, other life demands, all add up to compassion fatigue.
Jadi di tahapan ketujuh itu ada sisa stres dari compassion itu sendiri. Dia ditambah dengan yang step 8, yaitu adalah paparan yang terus-menerus terhadap penderitaan. Lalu yang ke-9 adalah memori atau ingatan traumatis, ditambah lagi dengan tuntutan-tuntutan lain dalam kehidupan ini, akhirnya semuanya itu akan menyebabkan compassion fatigue.
As I mentioned earlier, compassion fatigue has been around for a while, but the COVID-19 pandemic has brought it from the background into the foreground. It's a lot more prevalent now because people are suffering from compassion fatigue due to the virus pandemic.
seperti yang kita tahu bahwa compassion fatigue ini sebenarnya sudah ada dari dulu, namun dengan adanya COVID-19 atau pandemi ini, hal ini jadi sangat terlihat karena sekarang terlihat lebih jelas banyak orang yang mengalami hal ini.
So how can we deal with it? What do we do with compassion fatigue? And that's the main question of this talk today, to give you some tools that you as professionals, whether you're students studying psychology now and you're preparing for this professional life, whether you are a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a psychotherapist, whether you are teaching this, it's very important that we're able to have practical steps to take care of ourselves. So the first one is personal self-care.
Jadi lebih banyak terkait bagaimana kita bisa melakukan hal ini untuk menghindari compassion fatigue ini. Ini sangat penting untuk kita sebagai profesional, baik jadi mahasiswa psikologi, psikolog, terapis dan lain sebagainya. Di ranah ini kita sangat penting untuk bisa melakukan self care. Salah satunya adalah yang pertama adalah melakukan self care ini.
And the strange thing is, these seem so obvious, but so often we neglect them.
Hal ini tuh sangat jelas terlihat sehingga seringkali malah kita cenderung untuk melupakannya.
So the first one is taking a break from work, and that means in various ways. One of the things how you can take a break from work is vacation, appropriate vacation.
Jadi salah satunya yang bisa kita lakukan adalah mengambil waktu untuk beristirahat dari pekerjaan. Salah satunya adalah berlibur dengan cara berlibur.
And vacation means your email out of office is on, your cell phone is switched off, your practice is taken care of by a locum or other psychologist, or you say to your clients, we will meet in 2 weeks' time if that's appropriate.
Jadi yang dimaksud di sini berlibur adalah email-email itu harus dimatikan, telepon juga dimatikan, mungkin tempat terapi kita sudah ada orang lain yang menggantikan, atau juga mungkin kita bisa berkata pada pasien kita bahwa mungkin itu kita akan bertemu lagi 2 minggu dari sekarang apabila itu baik untuk diri Anda.
It also means that when you go home, at best not to take work with you, to finish work and leave it at work if possible, and that when you're at home, you're able to rest, spend time with the family, and do recreative activities.
Itu juga berarti bahwa saat kita pulang ke rumah, kita tidak mengambil pekerjaan dari kantor bawa ke rumah, tapi kita benar-benar bersih dari pekerjaan, kita di rumah bisa istirahat, bisa menghabiskan waktu dengan keluarga, dan benar-benar menggunakan waktu istirahat kita dengan tepat.
I've spoken to people who are in high pressure jobs, not just in the medical field. You might be a CEO, a business owner, and you feel you cannot take a break. I normally say to them, take a 5-minute vacation. And a 5-minute vacation is where you take your cup of tea or coffee and you go sit outside your office. Maybe you can go outside the building and you look at the trees and the sky. And for 5 minutes, you allow yourself to be in a different world.
Shaun juga sering berhubungan dengan orang-orang dengan pekerjaan yang sangat mungkin pekerjaan yang sangat terus-menerus, jadi tidak punya waktu untuk istirahat, sehingga yang dikatakan adalah saat beban kerjanya terlalu besar, kita bisa mengambil istirahat selama 5 menit untuk ngopi atau ngeteh dan keluar dari tempat kerja kita, melihat pohon-pohon dan benar-benar beristirahat.
Then another way we can deal with it is participating in breathing exercises, and there are different ones that I found on the internet that are helpful. For example, one used by military men is breathing in for a certain amount of seconds, holding your breath for a few seconds and letting it out. Controlled breathing, breathing in 4 counts, holding it 4 counts, letting out 4 counts.
Jadi salah satunya yang lain adalah berpartisipasi dalam latihan pernafasan. Nah, Shaun tadi mencontohkan ada latihan pernafasan yang bagus, itu latihan pernafasan dari militer yang bisa dilihat di YouTube, yaitu menarik nafas 4 hitungan, lalu menahan nafas 4 hitungan, lalu mengeluarkan nafas 4 hitungan. Yaitu itu juga disebut sebagai bernafas yang terkontrol.
Sorry, Michelle. And if you struggle with that, there's an app called Calm, C-A-L-M, the Calm app, and that gives you exercises in just, it might have sounds like the sea or wind or birds, and it has breathing exercises. So the Calm app is something you can use.
Jika Anda kesulitan dengan hal tersebut, bisa mendownload aplikasi yang namanya Calm Apps, C-A-L-M apps, yaitu di dalam aplikasi tersebut kita bisa belajar terkait ada lagu-lagu yang menenangkan, ada beberapa latihan-latihan yang mungkin kita bisa lakukan untuk bisa menenangkan diri.
Exercising is also very helpful. Remember, when we exercise, those good hormones are being released, dopamine, endorphins, oxytocin, serotonin, a very good stress reliever by doing exercise.
Jadi hal yang juga penting dilakukan adalah olahraga. Jadi saat kita melakukan olahraga itu banyak hormon-hormon yang dihasilkan, yaitu dopamin, endorfin, serotonin, hormon-hormon yang penting untuk kita menjadi lebih bahagia.
And then other recreational activities, these may include painting, making things, reading, not on your phone, but an actual book. So other recreational activities that build you up, that fill that tank with good water.
Jadi juga selain daripada itu bisa melakukan hal-hal rekreasional lainnya, yaitu seperti menggambar atau tadi membaca buku, tapi tidak dalam handphone ya, tapi membaca buku yang betul-betul buku, dan hal-hal itu nanti bisa mengisi tangki kita atau mengisi ember kita tadi.
Another one is establishing clear professional boundaries, and I'll give you an example. Our counseling center, remember I said it's free, so obviously we have a lot of people wanting to use our services, but we say counseling's Monday to Friday between 8 and 4, and just before this webinar this morning, I had a client, and we usually don't give our cell phone numbers out, our mobile numbers, we don't give them out. We only give our landline or email address. But this client, which is a 15-year-old, asked to see me today, and I said, well, is this an emergency? Is your life in danger? And the client said no. And then I said, well, then we can make an appointment in the coming week. So I'm very clear. I find out if there's a danger, and then I make sure that the professional boundary is in place.
Jadi hal yang lainnya adalah menetapkan batasan profesional yang jelas, seperti itu. Di tempat konseling yang dimiliki oleh Dr. Shaun, mereka memiliki free counseling, jadinya banyak orang yang ingin bergabung, banyak orang yang ingin datang untuk meminta konseling, tapi mereka punya jam kerja yang jelas, yaitu dari hari Senin sampai hari Jumat, jam 8 sampai jam 4 sore, seperti itu. Dan hari ini sebenarnya tadi ada seorang anak yang meminta jadwal konseling dengan Dr. Shaun, tapi Dr. Shaun mengatakan bahwa apakah itu mengancam sangat berbahaya atau enggak, kondisinya berbahaya, mengancam jiwa atau tidak. Kalau misal tidak, mungkin bisa reschedule ke hari yang lainnya.
And then also accepting the fact that successful outcomes are not always achievable. I've had to come to terms with that. I specialize in marriage and relational therapy, counseling, and sometimes the marriage does not survive, and no matter what I've tried to assist the clients with, and so it's important to also accept that sometimes it's not going to work out in the end.
Hal yang lain adalah menerima kenyataan bahwa hasil yang sukses itu tidak selalu dapat dicapai. sama seperti tadi dibilang bahwa beliau adalah seorang konseling terkait dengan pernikahan dan relasi, namun tidak semua pernikahan dan relasi dapat diselamatkan. Jadi kita harus tahu bahwa hal itu memang mungkin terjadi.
Then a second way of dealing with it, besides personal self-care, is social self-care. And there we maintain a diverse network of social support from colleagues to peers.
Selain daripada tadi self-care yang personal sifatnya, juga ada perawatan diri yang sifatnya lebih ke sosial, yaitu mempertahankan jaringan sosial di mana kita bisa mendapatkan dukungan sosial, mulai dari kolega sampai hewan peliharaan.
So what's very interesting is just before New York had initiated a stringent lockdown at the beginning of the COVID pandemic in New York, there was a huge increase in people adopting pets from the S.Psi. Very interesting. They realized they were going to be isolated and they would need companionship.
Jadi sebelum adanya lockdown diberlakukan di New York, sebelum itu banyak sekali orang yang mengadopsi hewan peliharaan akhirnya, dan mereka mungkin merasa bahwa rekan atau teman di kala lockdown itu sangat penting, sehingga mereka mulai mengadopsi hewan-hewan seperti itu, hewan peliharaan.
So it's very important as professionals also to make sure we have a network of support. We normally tell others, but then we don't practice it ourselves.
Dan sebagai profesional kita sebenarnya sangat penting untuk tahu bahwa kita juga butuh orang lain. Kadang-kadang kita saat mengatakan pada orang lain, kamu butuh orang lain, tapi untuk kita sendiri kadang-kadang kita tidak menjalankan hal tersebut.
Okay, what about self-compassion? How about saying to yourself that I need to give myself a little bit of space and not be so harsh on ourselves? So self-compassion or self-care is the use of self-compassion may lessen the experiences of vicarious trauma that a counselor might experience through hearing client stories. So it's just saying to yourself, don't be so hard on yourself.
Jadi mengasihi diri sendiri itu adalah sebuah bentuk dari perawatan diri. Jadi jangan terlalu jahat pada diri kita sendiri, jangan terlalu keras pada diri kita sendiri, karena hal ini sebenarnya dengan mengasihi diri sendiri kita bisa mengurangi pengalaman trauma yang kita terdampak ke kita dari mendengarkan cerita-cerita klien yang mengalami trauma.
Okay, I think we have 15 minutes to go, Dr. Shaun.
Thank you. Thank you, Elly. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I think we're going to finish in time. Thank you so much for that. Then mindfulness as self-care alleviates the impact of vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue. And this includes these 4 areas: somatic therapy, body, or psychotherapy, states of mind, or emotion-focused therapy, your feelings, or gestalt therapy, experiential phenomena.
Jadi kesadaran diri sebagai perawatan diri itu mengurangi dampak trauma yang ditularkan dari pasien. Itu juga terkait dengan terapi untuk badan kita, terapi untuk pikiran, emosi, serta gestalt terapi, yaitu menangkap fenomena dari apa yang dialami.
Okay, so just a tip on that. It sounds strange. I, as a man, had to overcome the stigma, at least here in South Africa, of men going for massages. And my wife and I went for a Thai massage a few weeks ago, and that definitely helped with self-care. I felt a lot of stress leave me.
Jadi terkait dengan perawatan diri ini, Shaun itu sendiri kemarin baru saja melakukan sesuatu yang sebenarnya bertentangan dengan sesuatu yang mungkin yang ada di Afrika Selatan sana, yaitu dia pergi ke massage atau pijet bersama dengan istrinya, dan dia merasa bahwa dengan dia melakukan massage atau pijat itu merilis stresnya dia.
Okay, So how do we deal with it? Reducing stressful workloads, monitoring your sleep patterns. In other words, getting restful sleep, taking regular vacations, meditation, journaling, which is writing down what you're feeling, seeking personal therapy to process work problems, and regular exercise.
Selain itu, ada mengurangi beban kerja yang menyebabkan stres, lalu melakukan monitoring atau pengecekan terhadap pola tidur, dan mendapatkan tidur yang cukup, melakukan liburan secara rutin, melakukan meditasi, menulis jurnal atau mencatat, mencari terapi personal untuk membantu memproses masalah dalam pekerjaan, serta berolahraga secara rutin.
So how do we deal with it? What I want to list are some do's. This is what we should do. So the first thing is find someone to talk to. Do find someone to talk to.
Ini adalah hal-hal yang harus kita lakukan, yaitu carilah orang untuk bisa berbicara dengan dia.
Do understand that the pain you're feeling, the compassion fatigue you're feeling is normal.
Pahami bahwa rasa sakit atau compassion fatigue yang dialami saat itu adalah sesuatu yang normal.
Do exercise and eat properly.
Olahraga dan makan dengan tepat.
One of the ways I can test myself, and that's because I love food, is if I start eating a lot of junk food, then I know something is not right.
Karena Shaun ini suka makan, sehingga saat dia mulai banyak makan junk food atau makanan-makanan cepat saji, dia tahu ada sesuatu yang nggak beres.
Do you get enough sleep?
Mendapatkan tidur yang cukup.
Sleep science has taught us that for the majority of the world's population, we need between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. Only 4% of the world's population can do with less than 6 hours of sleep. So you are not the exception. You need to get your 7 to 9 hours sleep.
Jadi dari penelitian tentang tidur itu mayoritas orang membutuhkan 7 sampai 9 jam untuk tidur. Hanya 4% dari keseluruhan itu membutuhkan kurang dari 6 jam untuk bisa berfungsi dengan baik. Kita semua ini bukan sesuatu yang bisa eksepsional atau bisa dikecualikan dari itu. Jadi kita tetap butuh 7 sampai 9 jam untuk tidur.
Okay, so do take some time off. I've mentioned that. Do develop interest out of your area of work or vocation. I've mentioned that. And identify what's important to you.
Tadi sudah dikatakan di sebelumnya, yaitu meluangkan waktu, lalu juga mengembangkan ketertarikan pada hal-hal di luar pekerjaan. Tadi sudah dibilang juga. Dan ada lagi, yaitu mengidentifikasi apa hal yang penting untuk dirimu.
So every do list should also have a don't list.
Untuk setiap yang harus dilakukan, pasti ada yang jangan dilakukan.
So don't blame others.
Jadi jangan menyalahkan orang lain.
Don't look for a new job, buy a new car, get a divorce, or have an affair.
Jangan mencari pekerjaan baru, mencari mobil baru, melakukan perceraian atau perselingkuhan.
We think these are funny, or we think they're strange, but often people do this.
Kita merasa itu hal yang lucu atau aneh, tapi orang kadang-kadang memang melakukan hal-hal tersebut.
Don't fall into the habit of complaining with your colleagues.
Jangan jatuh pada kebiasaan-kebiasaan untuk mengeluh dengan kolega atau rekan sekerja.
It's more important to talk to that one person in your social network that can support you.
Itu lebih baik kita bisa menemukan satu orang di lingkungan kerja yang bisa mendukung atau mensupport kita.
Don't hire a lawyer.
Jangan mempekerjakan pengacara.
Why not hire a lawyer? Because you might be angry at your boss for causing this in your life. And if you remember, point 1 says, don't blame others. Don't hire a lawyer.
Jadi kenapa kok tidak boleh mempekerjakan pengacara? Karena kita bisa jadi marah kepada bos kita, dan kalau misal kita mau lihat di poin pertama tadi, jangan menyalahkan orang lain. Jadi jangan mempekerjakan pengacara.
Don't work harder and longer.
Jangan bekerja lebih keras dalam durasi yang lebih panjang.
A very important study on burnout in dentists showed that the way that they can reduce burnout is by actually talking more to the client and seeing less clients. So it wasn't working harder and longer that solved their problem.
So in the dentist, they talk more with the patient, and the second one is
don't take on more patients. They don't see more patients.
Yep. Jadi pada penelitian dengan dokter gigi, yang membuat mereka tidak burnout adalah dengan mereka tidak mengambil lebih banyak pasien dan mereka berbicara lebih sering pada pasiennya.
Don't self-medicate.
Jangan berusaha untuk mengobati diri sendiri.
And remember, self-medicate, we usually think of medicine. Self-medication can be various formats. It can be sex, it can be alcohol, it can be pornography, it can be anything that is trying to take the place of the pain you're feeling.
Jadi jangan berpikir bahwa mengobati diri sendiri ini hanya dengan obat yang secara fisik, tapi bisa juga dengan seks, bisa dengan alkohol, dengan pornografi, atau hal-hal yang bisa mengalihkan kita dari rasa sakit yang dialami.
And then don't neglect your own needs and interests.
Dan jangan mengabaikan kebutuhan atau keinginan diri sendiri.
So here are some resources that I can suggest. Compassionfatigue.org is a very good website. It wasn't established by Charles Figley, but it does follow his work. And when Dr. Elly provides you with the notes of this webinar, hopefully then you would have these resources and you can use them. I found the third one, the Pro Quality of Life for Living test, to be a very good resource.
Jadi di sini ada sumber-sumber yang bisa kita lihat. Yang pertama ada compassionfatigue.org. Di situ bukan Charles Figley langsung yang memiliki website ini, tapi website ini mengikuti penelitian-penelitian dan research-nya Charles Figley. Dan juga ada hal yang menarik itu nanti mungkin boleh dilihat dari sumber-sumber yang sudah ditampilkan di situ.
And what I haven't listed here, but because it's not part of the topic, we know that with burnout, the Maslow inventory is the best test to take.
Sorry, the Maslow?
Yeah, Maslow inventory, burnout inventory.
Ya. Jadi ada juga inventory atau alat tes terkait dengan burnout yang mungkin juga bisa dilihat untuk menambah pengetahuan kita.
And that comes to the end of my presentation, and just some research resources that you may use. This is the website or the Facebook page of our Hope Center. We are called the Hope Center, where we give people hope to be able to deal with their challenges. And on Facebook, it is Hatfield Hope Center. Our Twitter handle is Hatfield Hope Center. We're also on Instagram. So anywhere you search for at Hatfield Hope Center, you should be able to get hold of us.
Jadi yang terakhir adalah ini adalah website atau dari Facebook, Twitter, dan Instagram yang dimiliki oleh Hope Center ini, yang dijalankan oleh Dr. Shaun ini. Kita bisa lihat nanti kontennya di dalam masing-masing link yang ada di situ.
We have currently, since the lockdown started in South Africa, end of March, presented 45 webinars dealing with issues such as abuse, depression, marriage during lockdown, dealing with loss or grief, and you're welcome to go and see those videos on our Facebook page.
Jadi di Facebook page mereka punya ada 45 webinar yang sudah dilakukan terkait dengan mungkin abuse, terkait dengan depresi, ada pernikahan saat pandemi, dan lain sebagainya, mungkin bisa dicek di Facebook mereka.
And with that, I conclude. Thank you so much, Dr. Elly and Michelle, for your translating. I really hope that this has helped our participants and delegates understand compassion fatigue a little better and expose them to a very interesting topic to research and to practice. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Dr. Shaun. That's very interesting topic, I think, that we have along this evening. And we have one raised hand already, and 5 questions in the chat room. Maybe I can read quickly about the question. The first is from Nursan Junita. She wants to differentiate between the compassion fatigue and also the vicarious trauma, I think, because the symptom it look like the same. And then the second question is about from the anonymous attendee. She or he maybe mentioned about a close relation with the patient that being abused before, and there are several problems between them afterward. Maybe this is about the personal also, the communication and so on, and influence relation between the two. So I think want to know and not how to handle this situation. And then the third is anonymous attendee also. This is about the his or her experience about the breathing exercise, meditation, and another form of relaxation technique. But the main thing is he or she is difficult to focus on the process and how to deal with it. And on the fourth question is about how it's Sina Husnu Pudani into you, because you mentioned about how the housewife will be have also the risk to be on this compassion also. So I think the housewife.
Okay. So should we maybe just do one question at a time? Maybe just read question 1 for me again, and then I can look at that.
Okay. The first, she wants you to differentiate between the vicarious trauma and then and the compassion, because the symptoms are almost the same, I think.
Yes. Yes, they are very similar. I think the primary differentiation between compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma is that compassion fatigue is usually first-hand, and vicarious trauma can be second-hand. So compassion fatigue is you are working with a client all the time. You are busy with that child abuse situation. You are busy in the hospital with the people who are dying of cancer in the oncology ward. It's first-hand exposure, compassion fatigue. Vicarious trauma is second-hand exposure. It's usually someone telling you, a family member telling you about an aunt who died, or you reading in the newspaper about a bad situation. So that would be, to me, the primary differentiation between the two. The second question?
Okay, the second question is about he or she has a relation with the client that being had a child abuse before, and there are several issues on relation between them. So how to deal with this? Because I think the patient will has several personal issues, so that will influence with our caregiver.
Okay, so does the client have the personal issues, or as the psychologist or the caregiver, use that term, has the caregiver got challenges?
the client has several the issue because he
Okay.
has been in the child abuse before.
Okay. So in connection with this talk, which is compassion fatigue, the question that I would have is, I'm not going to give counseling advice because that's not my role. My role is, how do I help the caregiver? So the important thing for me is to ask this person, are you making sure that when you leave the client, you are not constantly thinking on the problem? Are you able to spend time with your family and not worry about the client? Are you able to go and exercise and get the stress out of you? Does that make sense?
I mean, I think this person, from what I read here, this person like doing the detachment with the passion because she or he feel overwhelmed with the story of the passion, and
Yes.
I think she or he asking, am I make a false decision to let him being alone to heal himself first? So maybe the question is more like, is it a wrong thing to detach to the passion when the passion is need constant attention?
Yes. So no, we are very careful with constant attention because we also don't want to create codependency. I am not your savior. I'm a guide who's walking alongside you. And so there's a few things I would think. Remember, I don't know all the variables in this scenario. So I'm just hearing a question. I don't know all the environment of it. But one of the things I would say is, if it becomes overwhelming, I would either refer the client to someone else, or I would be very clear in the boundaries. Remember, I said at the beginning of the talk, I had a client who wanted to see me, and I said, is this life-threatening? Because I'm busy with a conference today. And they said no. So I said, okay, then we can wait till Monday and make an appointment.
Okay. So the third question is about how our participant is practicing the breathing exercise, meditation, and another form of relaxation. But the problem is he or he cannot focus on that process, the process of relaxation technique.
Oh, so as I understand it, then it seems like the caregiver is not able to relax enough to think on the process of relaxing. Is that correct?
Yep, sir.
Okay. So one of the things that's very interesting, remember, we have to acquire skills or ways of doing things. We didn't come into this world speaking Indonesian language or dialect or South African. We acquired that. So same with relaxation techniques. They take time to practice. They're not an instant fix. So one of the things that I did read, and this might help the caregiver. Remember, in this case, I'm referring to caregiver because everyone who's participating here, I'm speaking to you as caregivers. I practice what I read, a technique where the two areas where we seem to be most stressed is our jaw and our hands. And so what I do is I drop my jaw. This is a technique. I relax it. Just let it hang. And I open my hands. Looks strange. Hopefully no one's watching you when you do this, but just, and I breathe slowly and deeply. The problem is we breathe too shallow and we don't get enough oxygen to our brain. So I really do breathe slow and deep. I would go, keep it in, out. Or I would do 2 in, 1 out. Because why the second one? It goes deeper in my lungs. I don't know if you want to translate this or if this answers the question to the participant.
Maybe I can translate it, sir. Jadi seperti yang tadi disebutkan bahwa relaksasi itu memang sesuatu yang memang harus dilatih terus-menerus untuk kita bisa menguasainya. Jadi kita tidak bisa langsung tiba-tiba bisa rileks. Nah, tadi ada beberapa hal yang mungkin bisa dilakukan. Tadi Dr. Shaun berbagi terkait dengan tips-tips untuk melakukan relaksasi, yaitu biasanya otot yang paling tegang itu adalah otot di rahang kita. Jadi tadi disebutkan bahwa kita bisa membuka mulut, merilekskan rahang, lalu membuka mulut, membuka tangan, lalu juga sambil bernafas dalam. Kadang-kadang kita lupa untuk melakukan pernafasan yang dalam dan oksigen itu tidak sampai masuk ke otak. Sehingga tadi yang dilakukan juga selain daripada merilekskan jaw, merilekskan rahang terbuka, juga melakukan pernafasan yang panjang. Jadi menarik nafas panjang, lalu menahannya, lalu mengeluarkan nafas tersebut. Nah, selain itu juga ada teknik lagi. Yang kedua adalah dengan 2 kali penarikan nafas dan 2 kali melepaskan nafas, yaitu dengan menarik 2 kali, lalu melepaskannya 2 kali, sehingga oksigennya bisa masuk ke otak dan paru-paru kita.
That's interesting. I think at the time we have an exercise with you, Dr. Shaun.
Okay.
So we can be more relaxed. Okay. I saw the raise hand before. Maybe before we go to another question, shall I know who raised hand? Maybe Dr. Mary will help me. Is there any participant that raised hand before? No?
I see one of the comments is that the cat jumped on the keyboard, and maybe that sent it by accident.
Okay. And the fourth question is about this is from Sina. We want to thank you since you mentioned about the housewife, that maybe housewife will be also have the
compassion fatigue from housework.
Yeah.
Well, let me put it this way. Burnout is more related to your environment and compassion fatigue more to relationships. So unless she is arguing with someone while she's doing housework, and or it's someone like maybe my father-in-law that has dementia, if it's that kind of case, maybe compassion fatigue, but I don't think it would be compassion fatigue from doing housework. I think that would be closer to maybe burnout if lack of personal accomplishment. That you're doing housework every day to do it again, and there's no thank you.
Okay. Before Michelle translate for us, so I want to add a little bit question. Why you mention about the wife, not the husband?
Well, we live in a new world. It could be the husband too. Hey.
Okay. Please translate, Michelle.
Jadi perbedaan yang jelas kalau misal ibu rumah tangga itu mungkin bisa yang dialami mungkin adalah burnout, yaitu kelelahan saat bekerja itu karena mungkin pekerjaannya sama terus-menerus dan tidak ada ucapan terima kasih yang diterimanya sehingga mungkin itu mengakibatkan burnout. Jadi perbedaan antara dua hal itu adalah jika burnout itu lebih pada hubungannya dengan lingkungan, namun compassion fatigue itu lebih pada relasionalnya, jadi relasi pada orang di rumah tersebut. Kecuali kalau misalkan ada problem seperti tadi ibu mertua dari Shaun itu kan memiliki problem bahwa secara relasional. Nah, itu mungkin baru compassion fatigue. Tapi kalau terkait dengan pekerjaan yang terus-menerus dilakukan itu lebih kepada burnout.
Maybe Michelle, just to add, I wouldn't necessarily even think it's burnout. I'm saying it's closer to burnout, but it sounds like this person, it might be more a struggle with boredom, maybe not being appreciated, maybe meaning, purpose in life. Is my meaning, purpose just to clean up the house after my family? The meaning of life. So those are some of the questions I would ask the caregiver. Does it make sense?
Yeah. Michelle?
I'm sorry, I lost the connection for a while. So
no problem. I said I don't
maybe
think it's burnout. I think it's maybe more boredom, or being unappreciated, boredom, being bored, being unappreciated, not thanked,
Yep.
and maybe even a meaning in life. It could be that the husband or wife who's cleaning the house is saying, is this the meaning of my existence? So there are other questions I would ask.
Okay. If there's
Jadi
any...
mungkin
Okay. Michelle, go on.
jadi mungkin tadi yang disebutkan itu mungkin bukan benar-benar burnout, tapi lebih pada mendekati seperti burnout, tapi mungkin lebih bosan atau merasa tidak dihargai, atau bahkan terkadang merasa bingung dengan sebenarnya makna dari kehidupannya itu apa? Apakah ini benar-benar hal yang ingin aku lakukan dalam kehidupan ini atau tidak? Seperti itu.
Okay, we go on the fifth question. I think this is about
Definition of ideal
oh yeah,
self-love.
yeah. This is about the definition of ideal self-love. Maybe because you mentioned about how we care of ourselves to avoid the condition fatigue. So maybe this is kind of related to the self-love and
Okay.
yeah. I lost my...
So, more like, what is the definition of ideal self-love, sir?
Okay. So ideal self-love, again, do note that the different religions will have variances on it, but in essence, self-love would be how we love ourselves. So if you're a Christian, you would ascribe to the belief system that love God with everything that you are and have, and then love your neighbor as yourself. Now notice, loving yourself, generally humans, now remember I say generally, we look after ourselves. We don't try and harm ourselves. Normally when we harm ourselves, we think we realize there's something wrong. So when someone is cutting themselves, when someone is anorexic or bulimic, we understand that there is something that's not right in that way. So when we talk about ideal self-love, it means to look after yourself physically, eating right, sleeping enough, exercising. When we look after ourselves socially, having friends, doing fun things. So does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's true. And we go on the next question about the sensitive.
Do I need to translate first?
Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry. I just want to move fast because the time is.
Okay. Now maybe I'll just do a little translation. Jadi dari setiap agama itu biasanya definisi untuk self love ini akan berbeda-beda. Kalau tadi Shaun bilang untuk bagi yang Nasrani, definisi self love itu adalah mengasihi orang lain sama seperti kita mengasihi diri kita sendiri. Nah, di caranya mengasihi diri kita sendiri itu ada secara fisik, ada secara sosial. Secara fisik itu ya kita makan yang baik, terus melakukan olahraga, kita melakukan olahraga, makan yang baik, istirahat yang cukup, itu secara fisik kita mengasihi diri kita sendiri. Secara sosial, punya teman, lalu bisa have fun atau bisa punya waktu yang menyenangkan bersama teman-teman, itu juga salah satu definisi dari self-love.
Okay, I think we move on. The next question is about impulsivity. Do you think that the the sensitive person will have a more higher risk for the compassion of it?
Which person was that? Which person would be more higher risk for compassion fatigue?
Highly sensitive person. Highly sensitive person. It's from Rosemary.
Yeah, I think so. I don't have any research to back it up, but what I would say is I would think so. And the reason being that if you are more sensitive, you're more likely to have it etched on your mind and for it to stay there. I'll give you an example. My wife, when I met her, is very sensitive to violence. So when we would watch a movie and I saw a violent scene coming up, I would say to her, close your eyes. And even my daughter, when she was younger and they wanted to watch Lord of the Rings, and we know in Lord of the Rings there's these creatures called orcs. They look disgusting. I would tell her, close your eyes, because they were more sensitive to that. I can watch that and it doesn't affect me. Well, it affects me less. Michelle, you want to translate that?
Orang yang punya sensitivitas yang sangat tinggi itu biasanya memang Shaun sebenarnya tidak punya data yang valid untuk melakukan backup terhadap hal itu, tapi kayaknya sih seperti itu. Jadi itu akan meningkatkan resiko mereka untuk ngalamin compassion fatigue, karena mereka yang lebih sensitif cenderung akan memikirkan itu lebih sering, memikirkan itu lebih dalam, sama seperti istri dan anaknya dari Dr. Shaun. Itu mereka sangat sensitif terhadap hal-hal yang berbau kekerasan. Jadi kalau misalnya ada di TV ada sesuatu yang berbau kekerasan, mereka Shaun akan meminta mereka untuk menutup matanya supaya nggak kepikiran terus-menerus seperti itu.
Okay, I think we move to the next question. This is about the impulsivity. Maybe this is related to the compassion fatigue. As you know, if people getting compassion fatigue, so it's like compensation. So maybe he doing much buying thing or something impulsivity make somebody more happier after buying thing or doing something that related to what he or she wants to do at the time. You know what I mean? So,
no, I'm struggling a little bit to understand the question.
The question is about the impulsivity. Yeah.
Impulsivity is an direct effect of having a compassion fatigue. If we have a compassion fatigue, do we prone to do the impulsive buying and stuff?
Oh, like okay. So in other words, so it's really back to either a self-medicating, which buying things impulsively could be self-medicating, and I know that because again, my mother is a saver and my dad is a spender, and when I'm under stress, I end up spending. I go buy extra chips, I go buy extra Coca-Cola, and I do all the wrong things, and then I must go for a run to try and get that out of my system. So I think that could be self-medicating, but there are many other variables at play here. The main thing about that is, the question is this person tired of the suffering of someone they're caring for, whether it's as a counselor or a hospice worker? Are they feeling, remember, fatigue? I'm tired of constantly being exposed to the suffering of others.
Oh, yeah. For Michelle Translate, there's a question that relates to that question. It's why we do not self-medicated. Why? So that's related to that question that you explain. This is about the I think you explain about why we cannot have a self-medicate.
No, not healthy.
Okay. Before Michelle answered, also maybe as participant want to raise hand and want to ask the question directly to Dr. Shaun, so we are welcome. Okay, Michelle.
Oke, jadi untuk yang tadi terkait dengan impulsivitas, itu mungkin mungkin bisa jadi salah satu efek, tapi yang perlu dilihat adalah apakah ada kelelahan atau perasaan sudah tidak mampu lagi menghadapi harus merawat atau menangani orang lain. Itu yang jadi inti dari compassion fatigue. Apakah kita tuh merasa kelelahan saat kita menangani atau merawat orang lain. jika ada faktor itu, maka itu mungkin compassion fatigue. Dan efeknya mungkin terkait dengan impulsivitas. Dr. Shaun sendiri mengatakan bahwa saat dia stres juga dia akan melakukan pembelian yang impulsif seperti itu. Jadi itu bisa jadi karena stres. Apakah terkait dengan compassion fatigue atau tidak? Kembali lagi pada basisnya. Apakah itu terkait dengan menangani orang lain, kelelahan karena menangani orang lain atau bukan?
Michelle, I just saw the question here, and the question, why shouldn't we self-medicate? The issue is not why we shouldn't self-medicate, it's about what self-medication we're using. So when we do inappropriate self-medication, like eating junk food, I mentioned sex, pornography, alcohol, that is detrimental. If you self-medicate by sleeping more, not too excessive, exercising, that's healthy medication. Does that make sense?
Yep. Jadi terkait dengan self-medication ini tergantung pada apa yang kita lakukan untuk melakukan self-medication. Kalau yang tadi seperti disebutkan bahwa kita makan makanan junk food, makan makanan cepat saji terus, lalu ada seks, pornografi, dan hal-hal yang negatif lainnya, maka itu tidak bisa dilakukan. Tapi apabila self-medication kita berupa mungkin tidur lebih banyak, tidur lebih cukup tepatnya, tidur lebih cukup, lalu berolahraga, maka itu sebenarnya bisa saja dilakukan.
Okay.
Maybe
once again, maybe if there are any participant that want to ask directly to Dr. Shaun, please raise hand. There are so many questions that not answered yet.
I see a question here, Dr. Elly, that maybe I can quickly answer.
Okay.
The question is from, I think, Resquita. Hi, Dr. Shaun. I'm a psychologist. I'm currently working at one of the referral hospitals. I'm not going to read the whole question. At the end, it is, does a support group sound like a good approach? My response is yes. It does sound like a good approach if we can be confidential and vulnerable in the group. So if the group can agree that we are not there to judge each other, you're not weak if you've got compassion fatigue. It can happen to anyone. And it's not a disease, it's an issue. It's not a disorder, it's just something that happens. So I think a support group is wonderful, but remember vulnerability and confidentiality. I hope that helps, Michelle.
Jadi ada dua hal yang sangat penting, itu sebenarnya support group itu akan sangat membantu sekali selama ada dua hal ini, yaitu selama orang-orang di dalamnya bisa menjaga kerahasiaan dan selama orang-orang yang di dalam situ mau berbagi tentang dengan kelemahannya mereka atau kesulitan mereka mau dengan jujur berbagi. Saat mereka bisa melakukan dua hal itu, sebenarnya support group ini sangat akan bermanfaat buat mereka juga.
I didn't see that these questions were actually in the chat boxes, in the question and answer section. So coming back to that one, the trauma of a child abused by his dad, am I making a false decision to let him be alone? No, I've at times had to let people, they weren't ready to deal with the issue. And then you do have to let them until they are ready.
Jadi kita juga harus melihat kesiapan dari pasien kita. Kalau mereka masih belum bisa melepaskan traumanya mereka, melepaskan rasa sakitnya mereka, ya kita bisa menunggu sampai mereka siap.
Yeah, I think there are several questions not being answered yet because we run out the time. I think we have yeah.
I'm willing to stay longer if you want to. I am willing. It depends on the participants.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
Shall we have extended time? Maybe Ronald or Albert? Okay. There are 3 questions more. I think this is about
2 questions more.
Yeah, question more. It's about the research.
Research about the compassion fatigue phenomenon.
Is that the second question, or where is that? Open question. Oh, yes.
Yep. from the
Hi, Dr. Shaun.
anonym.
I'm interested in doing research about compassion fatigue. Is it that question?
Yep,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah.
Okay. The Pro-Qual 5, yes, I have found it to be quite good. Compassion satisfaction, secondary trauma stress, and burnout. I've used it with our pastoral team, and it was very good. Can I ask your opinion about the 2? As I said, I think it's good. No 2 can answer all questions. So you have to ask yourself, what is it that I want to answer? And what tool or measurement or scale exists to answer that? And if it doesn't exist, what a wonderful research gap for you to develop the tool. I hope that helps.
Jadi memang tidak ada alat tes yang sempurna untuk menjawab semua pertanyaan-pertanyaan yang ada, tapi diharapkan dengan alat tes yang sudah ada kita bisa mengumpulkan pertanyaan-pertanyaan untuk membuat alat tes yang mungkin bisa menjawab pertanyaan yang ingin kita jawab. Maybe
we'll jump to the next question. This is about the peer group. The question is whether the compassion fatigue can be happen between or among the peer group. Yeah, I mean this is about the young adolescent maybe. So
okay, that's in Indonesian, so I'm not going to understand that. What did you say the question is?
About the compassion that can be happen in the peer group. So you know, in Indonesia, sometimes we close to each other, and there's a young adolescent that can be a peer. So can this happen? I mean, maybe the relation can be a burden, I think.
So is this in the peer group or in a family? Is the young adult in the peer group? Okay. From what I understand, it would seem to me it would be very good to have a multi-generational peer group. So it would be wise to have more older folk who've experienced a bit of life, who can give some wisdom from the past, and it's good to have young people who have the energy and can give wisdom from the present, and to help one another with that. We are very strong on multi-generational groups. Yes?
Maybe the question is more like, can this compassion fatigue also occur in the peer group, in the relationship in the peer group?
Well, it could.
Maybe he means in friendship.
Yes, so I think it can occur if you're not able to let it go. So again, if you leave the peer group and you heard someone else's story, and actually that is more vicarious trauma, that wouldn't be compassion fatigue. In the peer group, you are talking about compassion fatigue, and so you're listening to each other's stories. You wouldn't walk out with compassion fatigue because it's not a first-hand experience for you. You would walk out more with vicarious traumatization because it's second-hand. And secondly, that would only occur if you didn't leave it at the group, if you took it home with you. Does that help answer the question?
Jadi, yes, sir. Jadi saat ada dalam peer group itu mungkin yang terjadi adalah vicarious traumatization, karena kita tidak mengalami sendiri, tapi mungkin kita mendengar dari mereka mengalami hal-hal yang traumatis, sehingga kita menjadi terdampak dari hal traumatis yang dialami oleh orang lain dalam peer group. Hal itu juga cuma bisa terjadi hanya jika kita tidak bisa let go, tidak bisa melepaskan hal-hal tersebut, hanya berhenti pada peer group saja. Tapi kita bawa pulang ke rumah, jadi itu jadi beban kita sendiri, seperti itu.
Thank you. I think we have answered all the question, Dr. Shaun, and this is interesting discussion during this evening. We are very happy to have you. Maybe some other time. You
I would
would
love
like
to. I would love to. I thought this was so much fun and we were able to share with one another. I am so glad. Thank you for the opportunity.
last but not least, maybe the participant want to have a conversation with you. I think,
Okay.
okay, are you okay? You have time for us? Okay, Albert, maybe you can manage the conversation. You can ask the participant and explain the participant in Indonesian, I think.
Oke, thank you, Elly. Kak Michelle, can you help me?
Ya. Gimana?
Ini aku akan ngasih tahu pakai bahasa Indonesia, Kak Michelle translate pakai bahasa Inggris ya.
Oke.
Oke, jadi teman-teman dan Bapak Ibu sekalian yang ingin join untuk foto sesaat lagi bisa
So
memakai fitur raise
ini
hand.
So if you want to have a photo session with the Shaun, so you can raise hand. 2 minutes photo session.
Okay.
Maybe all the participants want to have a session, so maybe we can manage it 25 maybe, so we can shorten the time.
I see raised hands. I don't know if the participants are waiting to be given an opportunity to talk.
Ya, mungkin langsung aja mungkin ya kita lakukan kayak gitu. Mungkin kelamaan kalau raise hand. Mana?
apa di per page gitu aja Kak Bu?
Ya.
Tapi dipindah dulu ke penulis Bu, yang attending-nya.
Yeah. Untuk partisipan yang like a photo session, I hope you be patient with us. So because we want to have the first sound stream, so we do manage that.
So maybe all the participants can open up the camera.
That's lovely to see your faces. That's so beautiful, Nadia. Fantastic.
And we can wait for that.
Untuk teman-teman panelis, mungkin dipercepat untuk open cam yang udah join ke panelis.
Hi, it's Nita. That your daughter next to you.
Apakah itu anaknya? Yes, yeah.
Beautiful. A lovely family.
Cantik sekali.
Yeah. And there's Alyssa.
Hello, sir.
Great to see all these faces. Wonderful. There's Putri.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Now Noah's speaking to real people and not just a camera.
I'm sorry about that, Shaun. So you can see the beautiful face, handsome.
Oh, it's beautiful. Look at the variety. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So beautiful.
We learn so much from you.
Oh, my pleasure.
We can say to you, jangan bosan-bosan. You know what I mean?
No?
Jangan bosan-bosan.
Don't be bored to share something with us.
Okay. Now I want to say I am so privileged to see your faces and to be able to speak to you. I one of my favorite things in the world is meeting new people, new cultures, and seeing how people live and communicate with one another. And this has been so amazing. Although I haven't been in physical presence in Indonesia, I hope to visit you one day. It is just when I see all your faces, I just see such beauty and variety. And I would love to come learn more about your country and your people. But it's so nice seeing all of you. It's great. Like I said, I was worried I'm talking to a camera and just Elly and Michelle and two others. So it's so nice to know there's more of you that were listening.
So you're the real people now.
It's real people. And may what I shared with you really help you, that you look after yourself as caregivers. Maybe a quick question, or not question, story, just so that you know, because I don't want to take up time when maybe you need to leave. But I was in the military when I was much younger, just for 2 years, a year and a half. And one of the things they taught us in the military was that if you are in battle, the first thing you do is you fight to survive. But the second thing, I was a medic. The second thing was look after yourself. So if I was shot, I would have to bandage myself, put my own drip in, stabilize myself, and then I would call the wounded to come to me, the other soldiers to bring the wounded, and I'd look after them. So the importance of self-care, for looking after yourself in order to help others, is very important. If you don't look after yourself, you won't be there for others. So I want to encourage you to really look after yourself and live well. Get enough sleep, spend time with family and friends. That'll help you to be a better psychologist, a better counselor, a better person in your field of expertise. I trust that helps.
Sambil menunggu, mungkin saya translate juga. Dulu Shaun ini sempat ada di militer. Saat dia jadi seorang militer, dia diajarkan untuk selalu lihat, untuk bertarung untuk dirinya sendiri, untuk survive. Saat dia datang lagi sebagai paramedis, akhirnya dia juga mendapatkan hal, yaitu harus melihat atau harus look after yourself first, harus menangani dirinya dia sendiri dulu. Saat dia misalkan tertembak atau dia mengalami luka, dia harus bisa merawat lukanya dia dulu, baru bisa merawat luka orang lain. Itu jadi penting saat kita bisa mencintai, mengasihi diri kita sendiri dulu sebelum kita bisa membantu orang lain. Karena dengan kita bisa mengasihi diri kita sendiri, kita bisa membantu orang lain dengan lebih baik. Jadi harus makan yang baik, harus olahraga dan hidup dengan lebih baik. Hal-hal itu nanti akan membantu kita untuk menjadi psikolog, menjadi mungkin medis, menjadi suster, menjadi perawat, atau menjadi penolong yang lebih baik untuk orang lain.
Okay, I think we almost there. The photo session. Are we already?
Sebelumnya saya minta teman-teman yang masuk panelis ini buka kameranya dulu kalau bisa. Habis itu nanti kan ada 2 page, tolong persiapkan sesuai dengan aba-aba saya. Nanti saya akan bilang 1, 2, 3 cheese. Nanti cheese saya akan foto. Michelle, boleh ditranslate kan?
Oh. So after this we can have the photo session, and there will be a code like 1, 2, 3, and then we can take the photo.
Untuk pertama, saya ingin pastikan dulu semua peserta yang masuk di bagian panelis ini menyalakan kameranya ya.
First thing first, we want to make sure that everyone in this panelist turn on the camera, so we can take the picture, not just the name or the photograph. So we hope all of the participants can turn on the camera.
Oke, untuk page pertama ya. Ini sudah ada Bapak Shaunnya di sini. Hitungan 1, 2, 3 ya. Boleh berpose dulu. You can pause right now. 1, 2, 3, cheese. Oke. Mukanya udah bagus-bagus semua. Ini boleh wajahnya kelihatan sedikit. Ya, sudah ya. Teman-teman yang lain juga sudah. Saya ulang ya. 1, 2, 3, cheese. Okay, I'm going to the next page, page 2. I'm going to move you further to the page 2. Yeah, voila. And in my count, 1, 2, 3, cheese. Yeah. Okay, once more ya, start lagi. 1, 2, 3, cheese. Okay. Sudah.
All done.
Andai kata kalau ada peserta lain yang ingin, kalau tidak salah bisa raise hand. Kami untuk sementara kick dulu yang ada di sini panelisnya.
Okay, well, we would like to thank you for all of the participants for joining our session. I think we'll have another session, and also Lisa will have a closing statement.
I don't really prepare anything to say to all of these amazing people out here and to Dr. Shaun, but I just wanted to say that I think compassion fatigue is still something that we didn't talk about enough in our society, and it's important for us to know more about it. And with you sharing the information and sharing what you know, your experience, your thoughts to us, I think that's really helping and really helpful, because I saw a lot of questions regarding how compassion fatigue in this kind of area of study in school, in housewife, in medical studies. And we know that compassion fatigue is not something rare. All of us have it, but we're not
aware of it.
We don't realize that, we're not aware of it. So we really love today's session. And like Ma'am Elly said, jangan bosan-bosan, or don't hesitate to come to us again to share what you know, your knowledge, because we will gladly welcome you with an open arms. Thank you.
Have you again.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you for all the participants. See you again on the next webinar.
Bye-bye.
Hi. Don't go.
No, I won't go. I'm saying goodbye to the participants. Wow,
Because
that's such a wonderful...
Yeah. We would like to have a competition with you also.
Okay.
You be the star for now. But
I'm going to carry on drinking my cold coffee. No, I'm not going to sing now. No.
Dr. Shaun is a singer.
Wow.
Yeah, before the session, we play Dr. Session through the YouTube.
Okay.
And this recording will be on YouTube also, Shaun, if you don't mind.
No, that's fantastic.
Yeah. this this webinar held by the peer group, so the student arranged all of this.
This is fantastic. Well done to the students. I mean, if I was younger, I would want to be in this student.
Yeah.
You really have a wonderful student body.
Yeah.
You have a wonderful student body.
They're even better than me.
It's teamwork. It's all teamwork. Everyone doing their little bit together. That's so important.
Yeah, the young one. No, the 5G generation. So, no.
Yeah.
I think you have time the Saturday, your weekend.
Yes, and I'm actually so amazed to see so many students willing to be, at a webinar on a Saturday afternoon. I mean, I don't know about you, but in my country, they must probably either be on the sports field or they're going to be in the bars. But to be at a webinar to learn more, well done. I am so impressed with the students of Indonesia. Well done.
They have Saturday evening. The police will count them because we're not allowed to go to the bar for now.
So what's the time there? What is the time there now in Jakarta?
Surabaya is 5.
So, of course, it's 12:22, yeah? So it's 5:22 by you.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's a 5-hour difference. So yesterday, after talking to you in the technical, I ended up talking to Richard. Elly, you remember Richard, my co-site supervisor for the project?
Yeah.
And he's in Boston. So I went from you being 5 hours ahead of me to him being 5-6 hours after me. It's a global world. It is a global world. It is so strange. You can talk to someone in one part of the world, it's afternoon, next part of the world, it's morning. It was 7 a.m. for him. It was so strange.
But we united.
So when when you greet people, you've got to go good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
In the same time. So we have to mind about this also. which will be we talk about. And how about Richard? Is he fine? He's doing the research also?
What is doing research also?
In Boston?
Richard, yeah, he has been appointed on staff at Boston as a university staff member with Tyler. Remember Tyler, who's the statistician? And they look at human flourishing. They look at how can humans flourish. So everything that's positive psychology. So like forgiveness is positive psychology, and humility, character, virtue. So we are looking. Yesterday when I spoke to him, we spoke about compassion, fatigue, and suffering. How in COVID, looking at the data set that we have for the forgiveness research, if there is some link with suffering and compassion fatigue that we can see in the data.
This relates to the forgiveness research also?
What about the forgiveness paper also?
No, I mean that kind of research related to the forgiveness research also?
Yes. So it would look at suffering, compassion, and forgiveness. How can we tie the three in? Is there a connection?
I see.
So it's actually been amazing because we've already been able to publish 2 papers. Because our sample was, we had a group of about 400-500 respondents that did the survey before COVID. And then when we had our next group, it was during COVID. COVID had started. So we've already been able to contrast COVID with non-COVID responses.
So is it because of pandemic or not?
Exactly. And one of the papers was on religious coping.
Oh, okay.
So how do being a religious person, does it help you cope with a pandemic or not? And it was very interesting that yes, religious people cope better with pandemics than low religious people, higher religious people.
That's really interesting.
The religious people survive more.
Yeah, no problem.
You're not doing the getting data online?
Doing what online?
Getting data,
gather the data.
Oh, no. You know what? We thought of that, but there were too many challenges because we would have to write our own code and our own research. So what happened was we, for study 1C, approached a data capturing, a data gathering company called Social Surveys. And we paid them, and what they do is they get the necessary licenses from the government during COVID,